Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we welcome you to Yiaga's press conference. This time around, a preliminary press conference on observation plans for the governorship and state House of Assembly elections, holding tomorrow, the 9th of March 2019, and the pre-elections environment leading up to the elections. This briefing is the first in the series of 3 planned press conferences to be hosted by Yiaga Africa. We equally invite you to join us at the same location on Saturday, that's tomorrow, 9th of March, when Yiaga Africa will share its midday situational statement on the opening of polls, and on Sunday, 10th of March 2019 at 11 o'clock, when we will share our preliminary statement on the conduct of the elections. Yiaga Africa, I'm watching the votes observation of the 2019 governorship and state assembly election. Tomorrow, Saturday, 9th of March 2019, Nigeria will once again go to the polls to elect their state governors in 29 states across Nigeria, excluding Kogi, Bayelsa, Edo, Ondo, Anambra, Ekiti, and Osun State. The election will also include the election of state House of Assembly members representing 991 state constituencies and Abuja Area Council elections. For these elections, a total of 1,066 governorship candidates contesting in 29 states and 14,580 candidates and parties contesting for state assemblies. Yiaga Africa is strictly non-partisan and independent civil society organization without affiliation to any political party, candidate, or state agency. Yiaga Africa Watching the Vote effort include volunteers representing Nigeria's diversity, women and men, youth and the elderly, persons with disability, Muslims and Christians from the 6 geopolitical zones and 36 states of the Federation. Yiaga Africa's observers have all been carefully selected and extensively trained in accordance with strict criteria to ensure their independence and neutrality, and are properly accredited with INEC and have signed a project code of conduct to uphold standards of impartiality, objectivity, and professionalism. Yiaga Africa observes on behalf of all Nigerian people and speak in their name on the basis of verified data. For the March 9 governorship election, Yiaga Africa Watching the Vote will not be deploying the parallel vote tabulation (PVT) methodology. As such, Yiaga Africa will not be verifying the election day result, but assessing the election day processes at the polling unit and collation centers. Yiaga Africa will deploy a total of 682 observers to observe the election in 29 states. This comprises 642 stationary observers to one polling unit in each of 642 local government areas, and 40 roving observers and 8 Watching the Vote working group members. Yiaga Africa will also deploy observers to 642 local government areas, resort collation centers, and 29 state collation centers. Our observers will observe the entire election day process, from setup of the polling unit, accreditation, voting, announcement and posting of official result, and will send in periodic reports to the Watching the Vote National Data Center at floor 01, Benue Plateau Hall at the Transcorp Hilton Hotel, where they will be processed and analyzed. This deployment will enable Yiaga Africa to provide the most timely and accurate information on the governorship and state assembly elections in 29 states. Matters arising and recommendations. As noted in our statement, on the February 23rd presidential and National Assembly elections. The elections were characterized by similar shortcomings that marked previous national elections in Nigeria. As in past elections, logistic challenges faced by INEC that result in widespread late opening of polling units and malfeasance by political parties compromise the ability of citizens to vote and undermine public confidence in the process. We maintain that Nigeria lost an opportunity to improve the quality of its elections as compared to the 2015 elections. The elections were not the elections Nigeria expected, neither is it the elections Nigerians deserve. The March 9 elections represent INEC and other stakeholders with an opportunity to address all gaps and shortcomings observed in the February 23rd elections. Nigerians deserve an elections that inspires confidence and restores hope in electoral democracy in the country. To this end, Yiaga Africa notes the following. 1. Deployment of election materials. We note the deployment of election materials across the country, with at least 27 states confirming the deployment of sensitive and non-sensitive materials in local government areas of the state. While this is a positive sign, Yiaga Africa calls on the Independent National Electoral Commission to ensure a proper coordination and communication with the transport companies and unions providing logistics support to ensure early deployment of materials and personnel to polling units to break the trend of late commencement. Clarity of election day process. Yiaga Africa notes from its observation of the presidential elections the need for INEC to ensure proper communication on the elections process to ensure uniformity and strict compliance to the electoral guidelines. This includes the need for all presiding officers, assistant presiding officers at the polling unit or voting point to ensure that the smart card reader are shown to be zero accredited at the commencement of the polls, and at the close of polls announce the number of accredited voters at the close of polls before sorting and counting of ballot. There is a need for clarity on who of reserve the authority to cancel ballot and the levels where cancellations will take place. 2. Electoral accreditation of voters. Electronic accreditation of voters. Yiaga Africa notes that during the February 23rd elections, the smart card reader were not used throughout the process of accreditation of voters in 7% of the polling units. In another 2% of polling units, persons were permitted to vote without a permanent voter card, PVC. These infractions pose a threat to the integrity of the electoral process, if not curtailed. INEC should ensure strict compliance with the use of card readers for voter accreditations. Polling officials who disregard INEC guidelines and regulations should be sanctioned. Destruction and attack on INEC officials, materials, and structures. Yiaga Africa notes the increasing report of attacks on INEC officials, materials, and structures, and call on the security agency to effectively deploy security protections to properly secure INEC officials and elections materials, especially on election day. Yiaga Africa condemned the vandalization and destruction of INEC office in Ibesekbo and Akwa Ibom State. 5. Transparency of result collation process. Yiaga Africa is concerned with the non-compliance with result collation guidelines by INEC officials, especially presiding officers, ward collation officers, and returning officers. INEC should ensure collation centers are accessible to accredited observers. The Form EC40G should be revised to include details for cancellation for every polling unit where cancellations occurred. The current form only captured the name of the polling unit and the total number of registered voters affected with reasons for cancellation. To increase transparency of the collation process, INEC is encouraged to share Form EC40G G series with party agents present during the different stages of the collation process. Posting of Form EC40E. Yiaga Africa urges the Commission to fully comply to the electoral guidelines for the conduct of general elections by posting Form EC60E series in all collation centers. This recommendation is made based on watching the vote presidential election observations findings of result not posted in 19% of the observed sample polling unit. Strict compliance on guidelines for cancellation of ballot. Yiaga Africa, in its presidential election observation report, noted the high percentage of cancelled ballot and calls on INEC to ensure that the guidelines on cancelled ballot are strictly adhered to and reduce discretion on the part of INEC officials. This includes ensuring that where the scenario in the INEC guidelines on cancelled ballot provides for the elections to be conducted the following day, that such elections are conducted as so required to reduce the threat of disenfranchising voters for no fault of theirs. Election security. Yiaga Africa calls on the security agencies to ensure proper coordination, especially between the military and the police. It is important to note that the police has the coordinating responsibility of election security and not the soldiers. As such, proper lines of communications and rules of engagement should be adhered to. In addition, security agencies must at all costs remain non-partisan and professional in their conduct and operations. Yiaga Africa calls on all political parties contesting in these elections to ensure they encourage their supporters to come out and vote within the ambit of law and to refrain from electoral bribery. Voters. Yiaga Africa calls on Nigerian citizens, who are the biggest stakeholders in these elections, to turn out in their numbers and cast their vote by properly thumb printing to reduce the number of rejected or invalid votes. Yiaga Africa undertook the Watching the Vote project to provide Nigerian voters, presidential candidates, political parties, civil society, and INEC, and other aspirants and other candidates in this election with independent information on the conduct of the elections. The Watching the Vote project is mainly driven by data for all Nigerians beholden to none. Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.
So the question on the PVT, we expected that to be asked. So now the PVT, it's like we had mentioned during the presidential election, it's systematic observation, it's scientific, it's statistics and ICT, and to do that, it requires certain things. One, resources; the other, human capital, human management, personnel management. Now, for the presidential elections, you know, you're just focusing in observing the parties contesting in the presidential elections. However, for governorship, we have 1,066 parties contesting now, with different states having different parties. You have states like Imo with 70 parties contesting. You have states like Yobe. I think Yobe has a list with just 13 parties contesting. Now, different states have different parties contesting. And if you remember, the special feature of the PVT is that we verify results using the results as announced in the polling units for each parties. And then our database is designed with the checklist for that, specifically for that calculation. Now, to do that for the governorship, you need to deploy different database for each of the state elections, because now you're going to be verifying the result. Now, that alone comes with a lot of huge resources, and what you would have to do is for each state, you draw a separate sample for each state to ensure that it is representative of the whole within the state. So when we did all that calculation, that itself, as an organization, we realize that we want to ensure that our data at every point, we are confident in it and that it has quality. And to do such, we need to fully be prepared for that. And we realize that we wouldn't be able to give Nigerians the kind of quality data we would want to give if we were to deploy the PVT for the governorship as we did for the presidential. As such, we decided not to deploy the PVT for these governorship elections. However, our observation will be providing a report based on our observers' reports from the polling unit, and then we'll be observing the collation process at the LGA collation level and the state collation level. Now, for that, it's a different process, and we are not going to be, we wouldn't have the need to verify accuracy of the result as we did for the presidential elections. So it's about resources, about personnel, and also ensuring that at every point we are confident in the data that would provide to citizens.
Just to add that for the off-cycle governorship elections, we will be deploying the PVT. We hope to be deploying the PVT for Kogi and Bayelsa, just like we've done for other off-cycle elections. But it's just logistically a Herculean task to deploy the PVT for governorship. Just to deploy the PVT for the presidential alone, it took us years to plan and prepare for 2 years. To plan and prepare for the presidential elections. And so to do that for the governorship would have been...
it's a huge methodological challenge.
Yeah.
It's a methodological challenge as well. It's not simply about the resources. You may be alarmed when we say 1,000 and something political parties. It means it's an aggregation of the different parties running in each of the states. So if you already have a methodology and a framework that is built on a number of existing number of parties, if we don't disaggregate the state and treat each state as a separate entity and manage the election based on that, we can get the right data that we can actually be able to verify results with. And we are very concerned about the integrity of Yiaga Africa. So we wouldn't indulge in anything that will in any way question our integrity. And our integrity is based on that capacity to present data that is trusted, that is tested, verifiable, and that people will believe in.